This is the sound of a nation that still believes in faith, in family, in freedom. This is for the ones who punch the clock, pay their taxes, and still believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Living the American dream.
Brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
This is Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter on AM560 The Answer.
Hey everybody, this is Jim Marter, Saving the American Dream with my co-host.
I'm Gretchen Fritz.
And we are about ready to bring on a guest, but I am running for Congress in Illinois' 14th Congressional District. I'm the Republican nominee, and I'm joining you in the fight to remove our left-of-the-squad radical Democrat incumbent Congresswoman Lauren Underwood and bring representation and sanity back to Illinois and Washington. So join me, join the fight, and let's save the American dream.
We're starting the show with a very special guest. He's author of Douglass versus Marx, The Battle for America's Soul, referring to Frederick Douglass and Karl Marx. He is K. Carl Smith, and we welcome him on Saving the American Dream. Good morning, K. Carl.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
That's
a pleasure to have you here on the show. We're kind of excited about this topic. It kind of is interesting contrast with me and my opponent because I line up with Frederick Douglass and she lines up with Karl Marx. And that is Representative Lauren Underwood, by the way.
Okay.
So we are very glad to have you on. We know that there's a pastors' Liberty Conference here in Illinois coming up. And, tell us about that. Tell us about your involvement. And then tell us about really the background of the several books that you've authored. And like in particular, we're very interested in the debate between Douglass and Marx because it seems like that is what is really happening right now, real time America, in politics, in our schools, and every place else.
Well, the Liberty Pastors Training is a vision of Paul Blair. Many of you may recognize that name. He's a former offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears. And so Paul had the vision, and he's a pastor himself, to start a Liberty Pastors Training because a lot of pastors just got into the culture, into politics than they should be, and how to push back against a culture that's pushing God out of the culture. How do we put that back in place and be where we need to be as a nation? So Paul had a tremendous vision to get that going, and I'm happy to be a part of that. We'll be in Chicago the 27th. Well, it starts the 28th to the 30th, and I'm one of the presenters there, so I'm really, really happy about that. You asked me about the book that I wrote. I've written 4 books, and all my books are focused on really the life and the liberty message of Frederick Douglass. I am a huge Frederick Douglass fan. And did not start off that way. I'm from Alabama, and I grew up as a staunch Democrat. And then when I came across the liberty message of Frederick Douglass and his writings, it turned my thinking right side up. In particular, when Douglass made the comment about the 3/5 clause. I'm a graduate of a historical black college, Alabama A&M University, and I was taught in college by my history professor, and it's still being taught today, by the way, that the 3/5 clause meant that blacks are 3/5 of a human being. And when I read what Frederick Douglass had to say about it, he turned my thinking right side up. And ever since then, I've been on a mission. I've read everything Douglass has written. I've read everything written by Douglass in terms of his autobiographies, all 3 of them. I've read probably every biography in print, including children's books. I've read every academic paper I could get my hand on. I was just obsessed with his life, but mostly with his arguments. A lot of people don't see Douglass as a thinker. I mean, in my opinion, Douglass is the greatest sophisticated thinker when it comes to liberty and U.S. Constitution. And people don't see him that way. They don't refer to him as a philosopher. They refer to him as a former slave. He had something to do with abolition of slavery, and he met Abraham Lincoln. But there's more to him about that. And so I'm so happy that I'm able to come across and become obsessed with that, the writings of Douglass. The latest book that I wrote that I'm really excited about is entitled Douglass versus Marx. And here's the background to this. Frederick Douglass and Karl Marx were contemporaries. They were both born in 1818, but they never met and they never corresponded with one another. But these two men looked at the world in terms of the oppression in the world and came up with two opposing worldviews on how to address and overcome the injustice in our world. And the basics to it is basically this. Karl Marx advocated and believed that our rights come from government. Douglass believed and wrote that our rights come from God. Karl Marx called for the elimination of religion. Frederick Douglass said no. Karl Marx said religion has a way of making people docile, where they don't want to fight for anything on earth. They want to live a holy life, not get involved in anything, and get the reward in heaven. And Douglass said, no, my faith, my religion inspired me to be a warrior for justice. And of course, Karl Marx believed that parents should not be involved in the education of their children. The state should take care of all that. And Douglass wrote about and spoke about parental school choice. So when you really get into the writings of Douglass really defeats the arguments of Marxism and communism and socialism before those words were ever invented. I make that point by saying this. Douglass wrote extensively about the nature of slavery. I'm talking about the plantation slavery. He wrote about that extensively. But when you study Douglass and study Marxism, the techniques of oppression used by the plantation slave master are identical to the techniques of oppression used by a slave government. Communism, Marxism, socialism.
So, Carl, can you tell us what did Douglass think about America and the Constitution and our founding fathers?
Well, at first, when Douglass escaped from slavery, he was not much of a reader, he said, and he was mentored by a guy named William Lloyd Garrison. And the Garrisonians believed that the Constitution was a pact with the devil, and it promoted slavery. And Douglass believed that. But Douglass did something very interesting. He sat down one day and read the Constitution for himself. He read the Federalist Papers. He read Lysander Spooner's The Unconstitutionality of Slavery, and he had this epiphany. Douglass said, wait a minute. The Constitution is not a pro-slavery document. The word slavery is not even in the Constitution. And so Douglass had a totally different turn when he started becoming more critical-minded about what he was hearing and started reading for himself. And he referred to the Constitution as a glorious liberty document on many occasions. And so he had admiration for the Founding Fathers and respect for the U.S. Constitution. A man, if anybody could have a hate on America because he was a slave, Douglass should have gone toward Marxism, but he didn't. He didn't embrace the ideology of that Marxism teaches. Revolution. Doug said in his third autobiography, Douglass said, I'm not a revolutionist. I'm a reformer. Let's keep the best that we have and make things better, to include the Constitution. They just live by what's on paper. And so Douglass is this man who's left us a massive literary legacy. He wrote all his speeches out, all his lectures, he wrote them out. And thank God for that, because now we have his literary legacy to refute the lies and the false narrative of Marxism, of socialism.
We have about 2 minutes left. Can you tell us what was his belief about going back to Africa or integrating here in America? And was he considered to be a leader of the blacks in the Republican Party at the time?
Douglass is the father of the civil rights movement. And I would say that he was a mentor to a lot of blacks in politics. The first 7 blacks to serve in the U.S. Congress were black Republicans, mostly out of the South.
Right.
Their political mentor was Frederick Douglass. And when I read this story about these black men, the first black Republicans, first black to serve in the Congress were black Republicans, I said to myself, those guys were Frederick Douglass Republicans. And that name kind of stuck with me, and that's how I refer to myself.
Yeah, this is so fascinating. I mean, I could probably spend a whole weekend with you talking about this stuff, maybe longer. So we're going to keep you over the next break. We still have about a minute left. So I did want to see, just there's so much stuff here, but he was an advisor to Abe and other presidents. So can you tell us quickly about that, and then we'll come back after the break and dive into anything else here. So
Frederick Douglass had 0 days of formal schooling. He was a slave for 20 years. He ended up being an advisor to 5 Republican presidents: Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, James Garfield, Rutherford Hayes, and Benjamin Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, that's just amazing. And I guess one of the things when we come back is, why don't we know this? Why is it not taught? I mean, you kind of alluded to that a little bit in your intro. It's like, where's it going? Why is it not there? We should all know this, right?
Yes.
We'll be right back. Jim Marter, Gretchen Fritz, and K. Carl Smith.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Now, back to the show about faith, family, and freedom. You're listening to Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter on AM560 The Answer.
This is Jim Marter with Gretchen Fritz, my co-host, and we're here with K. Carl Smith, and we're talking about his book, Two World Views, One America, Douglass versus Marx, and we want to get back into it. I mean, you had some fascinating things going on, and we want to dive right into it.
Yeah, in regards to the book, what people need to understand, this is really not a history book. This book is a tactical manual. A history book tells you what happened. A tactical manual prepares you and guides you to victory. So this book, it guides you to victory, how to advance the cause of liberty, and how to defeat Marxism. And the book has 31 debates. Remember now, Karl Marx and Frederick Douglass never met. But I thought about it. Well, they were contemporaries. They both wrote about oppression in the world. Let's put them in the same room and properly introduce them to one another and see what they have to say. Mm. And so the content of each debate is based on what they believe. It's based on what they wrote. It's based on what they said. We're not making this stuff up because we have source documents that's listed in the back of the book where we got all of their comments from. So they're dialoguing. They're debating different things. At the end of every debate, there is a reflection. There is more of the story. What's the takeaway? There are talking points. These are talking points you can use in your conversation when you have this conversation with people about that particular topic, that particular concern that they're debating. There are at least 5 discussion questions after each debate, and there are guided answers to those questions after each debate. So it's really a built-in curriculum. But what it is, what people are doing, it's a book that you don't read and put it on the shelf. A lot of people are keeping that book with them because they want to sure they masters Douglass's arguments to help them become a better message of liberty. So when that Marxists come to your kitchen table around Thanksgiving time, where you invite them over, now you know how to engage them and really educate them about the value of liberty versus the value of government control. We call it value of government control, but why liberty is so important, and you're referencing what Douglass had to say. For example, one of the things that they're going to debate is the whole idea about free speech. Of course, Marxists believe that free speech got to be controlled. If it's a speech that's going to tear down the regime, you got to control that free speech. So, in the way it ends, Douglass will say something like, well, that's why, Carl, on such and such date, I gave this speech and I said this. And every debate has that. There's one that I love that I wrote is for, if you don't think about Karl Marx never really had a real job in his life. He relied on his business partner's angle to take care of him financially. Karl Marx didn't work. And so in this debate, Douglass challenges Marx regarding his lack of work ethic. And Douglass said to him, any man that does not fulfill his financial obligation to provide for his family has no business trying to lead a nation.
Amen.
And so every debate ends with a mic drop. from Douglas. Now, here's the thing.
Right.
Douglas crushes Marx in all the debates. Not because we rigged it that way, not because we diminished anything Karl Marx had to say. He won it because, number one, Douglas is right. And number two, we have the value of being in 2026. We can look at the 20th century and we can see that wherever Marxism was implemented, it has always failed. It always caused misery, poverty, collapsed economic system, and mass murders. Mm-hmm. That's why Douglas is winning. Yeah. That's why he wins. And that book, the book is, we're going to put this book in the hand of, our goal is to put the book in the hand of pastors, students, and parents and grandparents. Because the last line of defense to save our republic is with parents and grandparents. We can't rely on our social institutions to do this. We have to do it. But you got to equip that child with something they can fight with. Can I tell a quick story? What happened with this guy named KJ?
Absolutely. Yep.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, KJ is a student here in Alabama, and this happened last year. But KJ had been reading the book Douglas versus Marx. Okay, and in his history class, the professor stood up and said, "The Constitution is a pro-slavery document," and he mentioned that the 3/5 clause was about blacks being 3/5 of a human being. Again, I was taught that in college. But KJ had been reading Douglas versus Marx. So KJ respectfully pushed back against the teacher and brought in what Douglas had to say about it. Make a long story short, KJ won the argument.
That's
with
right.
the professor. And he won the classroom. Because now other students in the classroom want to know more about Frederick Douglass's liberty message.
That is awesome.
And so that's what we have to do. While we're fighting our school system, I think what we have to do, Jim, we got to make sure our children are prepared to fight in this ideological battle before they step into the classroom.
So we've got about 4 minutes left. So what are some of the other topics that you cover in the book?
All the claims of Marxism: religion, immigration, who controls the school, equity, DEI. DEI is one of the topics in there because Douglas spoke about that. Now you got me.
Yeah. Actually, let's focus in on that one because DEI is, like in my school district, Oswego, Illinois, the Marxists are in control, doubling down, teaching this nonsense in our schools right here in the 14th district, Oswego, Illinois. So what does Frederick Douglass, the FDR Republicans, have to say about that?
Well, you go back to Douglas's speech again. Everything in the book is based on what Douglas said, what Karl Marx said. This book is not a commentary, and so Douglas gave a speech. I think what a black man wants. I believe that's the name of the speech. And Douglas talked about stop treating blacks like they're a special class of citizen. He said you didn't do anything special for the Irish. He said leave them alone and mind your own business. If the apple falls from the tree, then let it fall. But black folks have the ability to take care of themselves. They don't need the government to interfere and take care of them. Douglas said, because the question they asked Douglas was, he said, what shall we do with the Negro? Meaning that after slavery is over with, you got 4 billion blacks going to be free from slavery. Mm-hmm. They said, what shall we do with the Negro? Douglas said, what do you mean, what shall you do with the Negro? Don't you think you've done enough? You made him a slave, right? He said, stop playing mischief with his life. He said, leave him alone and mind your own business.
Amen.
Stop coming up with programs that's going to separate him, to create animosity among the races. Yeah. So Douglas wrote about this stuff. So that's why Douglas is so important, because no one knows the arguments of Douglas. That's what the book does. It equips you with the argument of Douglas and how he defeated Marx in those debates, and how you can win your arguments in your conversation with people you're engaged in now.
And it's so important to
you go to city council.
It's so important to hear that from a person of color. You know that you're not the opposite race arguing that blacks don't need any help. You're the same race arguing leave them alone, let them do what they're going to do.
Well, more important than that, Frederick Douglass is saying this. Here's a man who was born below poverty.
Right, into
slavery is below poverty.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Frederick Douglass is saying this, and I didn't say this in terms of a tidbit about his life. Don't you know when Douglass passed away, 1895, he had $300,000 in savings.
Wow.
In today's money, that's over $10 million.
Right.
That's amazing.
So what I learned is by studying Douglass, you have to apply yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some things that Douglass believed in as part of his action plan that if you repeat that action plan, you also become successful. And basically what he did was this. He discovered his God-given purpose. He discovered his passion. He took that obsession and he made it a profession, period. That's all he did.
That is awesome. So tell us, we only got 40-some seconds left, but tell us about the upcoming conference. You're going to be there. You're going to be instructing in this, and let us know.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be the 27th through the 30th in Oak Brook. Yep. And give the website so they get the book. That's kcarl.company.site. KCARL.company.site. SITE.
All right. Well, we're so happy to have you on here. Thank you very much for being with us, K. Carl. And folks, go out there and get that book. I've got a copy. I've already started reading it, and it's fascinating.
If you love life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you're in the right place. More of Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter on AM560 The Answer.
All right, we're back here, Gretchen and I. Jim Marter, Saving the American Dream. So my congressional opponent, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, she is the current incumbent in the 14th District, Illinois. I am the Republican nominee. And, I think that the people of our district, where we have 7 counties in the 14th Congressional District, I think they deserve an opportunity to see both of us in person, live and debating. And she's had a habit of dodging debates over the years that she's been an incumbent, although her contemporary who she beat in 2018, Congressman Randy Holtgren, afforded her that opportunity. So we just want to remind Congresswoman Underwood of that. We know she's listening with her crew. So we're here. But today, look, I'm really renewing that challenge. I think that we need to do more of this, right? We need to have good public forum discussions, without people yelling and screaming and shouting the other one down, and having a debate on ideas. And I think that's what we just heard with K. Carl Smith and, his putting together of this debate between Douglass and Marx, that obviously didn't happen in real life, but that, like he said, they were contemporaries. And he's put this debate together from his experience of reading all their works and just diving into it. It's very fascinating. And in the 14th Congressional District, in the city of Ottawa, we have a historic site, and that site is the site of the very first Lincoln Douglas, and that wouldn't be a freedom-loving Frederick Douglass. That would be a slavery-loving Stephen A. Douglas, the little giant, Democrat Stephen A. Douglas, Republican Abraham Lincoln, because I think most of our kids today have no idea. Because they weren't taught that. So, to me, what better place in the 14th Congressional District, Congresswoman Underwood, than for you and I to have a debate at the site, or at least in the town of Ottawa, where that first debate occurred on August 21st, near 150 years ago? I got to get that number correct. But it's been a while. Have you ever been to the site there?
Not that I know of. I've been to Ottawa, but I don't know that I've. Yeah, I don't know that I've been there. I love the historical touchstone of that. I love the reference.
Yeah. So the city of Ottawa, the Chamber of Commerce in Ottawa, and the Ottawa Times, they're kind of getting together to create a new festival for Ottawa. This is fantastic, by the way. It's a week long. I think it's starting August 15th. It goes through August 23rd, ends in a parade that day. But they're calling it debate days. I'm excited about it. I'm going to probably try to be there every day I can because they have some really cool stuff going on, including some sort of a Lincoln Douglas debate reenactment. Lots of history, and they have all kinds of sites. There are many sites around the city of Ottawa in Illinois here, right on the Illinois River. And oh, by the way, on the path of the Illinois and Michigan Canal, which Lincoln actually had a lot to do with from a legislator point of view being built. And it's a fascinating site. I've ridden on that trail with my scouts as their merit badge counselor from Marseilles to Ottawa and back, which was one of my 15-mile rides.
That's great.
I also did a 50-mile ride with scouts on that trail too, so that was a long story for another day. But anyway, so what do you think? I mean, you think we should have these debates?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, the policies that she has proposed, the things that she's voted for, these things need to be discussed and examined. Luckily, in the last couple of years since Trump has been president for the second time, the Democrats do not have the majority in Congress, so nothing that she wants has been implemented. Thank God. But what if they were? What does history tell us? What is this going to look like if these things are actually implemented?
Yeah, let her stand up and defend, some of these bills. I mean, there's so much going on there. And one of her recent posts, actually, it's a repeat post, but she claims she's very effective. She's passed 19 bills in 8 years. That's 2.4 or something per year.
And I have a hard time believing what is her definition of quote unquote passed.
Well, one was in your town. They renamed the post office. That was one of the bills that passed.
That was very important to do.
Right, but it was a nice thing, local thing. No problem. I probably would have voted for that one, by the way.
Sure.
So we can agree with Lauren Underwood on some things, right?
Well, right. I mean, no one's all bad or all good. But yeah, we want to see her receipts on the claims that you're extreme, and what does that mean to her? What is extremity to her?
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about the idea of getting her on the debate stage so we can get to the bottom of that, right?
Right.
So
right, but she's never really had a job that was not taxpayer funded. So, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your work history, your life experience compared to her life experience, which is very minimal.
Yeah, well, she's Nurse Underwood, got a master's in health administration. And then
never worked as a nurse.
Right, maybe not. And then went straight to Washington to get paid for by us, the taxpayers, under the newly disastrous Obamacare administration.
Freedom isn't free. You have to work for it. Now, more of Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter on AM560 The Answer. Here's Jim.
Welcome back to Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter. I'm Gretchen Fritz. So, Jim, we want to talk about some of Lauren Underwood's voting history. That's really the silver lining when you're running against an incumbent. They have voting history that they have to defend. So, it seems to me, just looking at some of these bills that the producers brought for us, it's very much illegal immigrant versus American citizen, and she voted for illegal immigrants every time.
Yeah, absolutely, and some of those acts, like Lincoln Riley Act, and if you don't know, she was a young woman murdered by someone who didn't belong in the United States, came here illegally, and she votes no on that. And these are the kinds of things that the bill is designed to prevent this from happening in the future and put enforcement policies and things into place. Preventing the Violence Against Women Act by illegal alien, another bill aimed at some of the same topics, H.R. 30, 119th Congress. I'm going to throw some of these out here because, on the fake news, they never give you, if they write a story, you click on a link, they never give you the stuff so you can actually see what was in it, right?
Sure.
So I like to put them out. That Lincoln Riley Act is H.R. 29, 119th Congress. Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. So we get in a little bit into the flavor of where she's really, I would say, engaging in a war on women, right?
Very anti-woman.
So, she won't stand with Riley Gaines and all the women in our college and high school sports, and even earlier than that nowadays, where we've got men and boys who are mentally ill with gender dysphoria, and we've got a bunch of folks pushing that this is a normal thing. No, it's not.
And not only that, but exposing young women in locker rooms to men. Men invading women's private spaces with just complete, utter disregard for women's safety, for women's sensibilities, for women's feelings. These spaces should be reserved for women.
Yeah, and I know a mutual friend of ours that I heard her say this once, that we were at an event, and she was like, when I was this age in school, I would have been horrified by, this going on. And
absolutely.
So this is what this is about. So, it doesn't make sense. And it's like Congresswoman Underwood just really ignores the issue. She doesn't even, she doesn't want to engage intellectually in the argument, right? So,
well, she very much votes the way her party tells her to vote.
Right,
let's just be honest.
Right.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, and so I ask you, who is the extremist? Keeping violent offenders off our streets, H.R. 8205, 118th Congress. Protect our communities from DUIs Act, H.R. 875, 119th Congress. Pregnant Student Rights Act, H.R. 6359, 119th Congress. And here's one more, Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act, H.R. 6945. As a nurse, you would think these are bills that she would want to support and help folks in her district that are facing issues, right? And she tries to claim to be that, but when we start, and we'll get into another segment in the next show about some of her bills where she's got bills that sound all great, right? The titles are, this is what we're doing, right?
Right.
But when you actually read the bills, they don't do anything.
Yeah,
right?
the ways
other than give money away.
The way that Democrats title their bills is just really asinine. But the Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act is meant to specifically say that federal money can be sent to crisis pregnancy centers that give real resources to people who want to have their babies, people who want to get a free ultrasound, people who want to get baby clothes, people who need diapers and formula and, parenting classes about, how to perform first aid and CPR for babies and these sorts of things. These resource centers are an integral part of our communities and should be eligible for federal funding.
Yeah, I visited one at I think it's called the Southside Pregnancy Resource Center, and it's awesome what these organizations and the people in them, and they're all volunteers, mostly, and what they're doing to help people in their communities and their neighborhoods. And I wish I could, take Congresswoman Underwood with me and let's have a visit together at one of these places, because the Southern Poverty Law Center, by the way, labels all these groups as hate groups, right?
Yes.
And so we're peeling that onion back now, and that's we're let's say let's
demystify.
Yes, what they really are, right? And thank God for the Trump administration and what they're doing on that front. Protecting us from these true hate groups, right? So, and you get down to the bottom of the line is, why did Congresswoman Underwood vote against these bills that you would think almost anybody, these are probably like 90-10 bills or maybe 95-5 bills versus 80-20. But is it because they're not woke enough? Is that the problem with these bills?
I'm sure it is.
So, so this is what we're facing in the 14th district. We have a representative in Congress who is really not out there representing our faith, our family, our values in the district. And this is what my campaign's about. We're going after her, taking her to town.
This is Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter. Stay right here on AM560 The Answer.
There's things to be done all over the world, but let's rebuild America first.
You love this country. So do we. You're listening to Saving the American Dream with Jim Marter on AM560 The Answer.
And, you know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Well, that was Kamala Harris, and we know what happened with her. She was rejected by the majority of voters, all the swing states and the Electoral College, and that is why we have to circle back and balance out Lauren Underwood. She is not much different than Kamala Harris, and we need to change. So, Jim, what is your plan? Contrast that with what Lauren Underwood's been doing.
Yeah, I know that clip just
it never gets less funny, let's be honest.
It just cracks you up, right? If it wasn't so darn serious, right? And that's what we're dealing with, right? So, look, it's real simple for me. It's, bring back American energy, and that's already underway with the last 2 years, but there's a lot more to be done on that front. Mm-hmm. Stop the policies fueling inflation, which gets into this waste, fraud, and abuse thing, the Somali fraud. I mean, Congresswoman Underwood has not commented on any of this stuff. We call her out all the time. Hey, these are things I think that you and I should be able to agree on, but silence nothing, right?
Yes.
Defending our rights and freedoms, right, which really is our undeniable, inalienable rights from our founding and our Constitution, which is there to protect and defend those things, including the Bill of Rights and the amendments passed since. But those are things that it seems like as Americans we should all agree on, but it seems like Congresswoman Underwood doesn't agree with those things and is not defending those things, and she's putting forth legislation and voting for legislation that really is against working family, working Americans, things like, protecting our votes, and securing our borders. I mean, is it in the American best interest to have 10 million folks from all over the world come in undocumented, illegally, not through the constitutional process, not through the federal immigration process, and have them vote in our elections, which is kind of their goal, right?
Right.
So protect our votes. Let's pass a really simple bill that says, hey, everybody should prove they're a citizen to have the right to vote, and then show up with an ID to prove that they're the person who proved their citizenship. Right?
Sure, absolutely. It's really anti-constitution if you look at her voting record.
Yeah, and the last but not least, protecting parents' rights and our children's rights in schools, which kind of get into this whole thing with the DEI, alphabet soup push and craziness that's going on, and it's everywhere. It's pervasive. I'm glad we're finally, as a country, pushing back on that, but we got a long way to go. And Chloe Cole is one of the perfect examples of that, where children are being really conned into and groomed into these mutilation surgeries and drug therapies and stuff like that. We got to stop that, put that Chloe Cole Act into law, and stop the wokeness from going on in our schools and stuff.
I mean, just so many things that need parental notification attached to them. That's one of Democrats' things, and which goes back to the Karl Marx discussion. Karl Marx, that the whole idea of, a village raising a child and, the government raising your child and you not having as much say in that all goes back to Marx.
Yeah, I mean, so it's insanity. We're going to wrap it up. Another, we never have enough time, but
No.
Jim Marter, your Republican nominee for U.S. Congress, Illinois' 14th District. Find me on the web, but social media, and my website at Marter, spelled M-A-R-T-E-R, the number 4 Congress, marterforcongress.com. And, we have a volunteer tab. Click on it. Come out and join us in this fight. Walk, make phone calls, donate, all can be found on those platforms for us. So
see you next week.
All right.